What happens when tournament fighting meets combat-hardened military training? The answer left a martial arts champion in handcuffs and a royal guard with barely a hair out of place. This clash became a masterclass in the difference between showmanship and lethal efficiency. Chen approached the royal guard expecting to create viral content. His miscalculation transformed into a demonstration of military discipline against competitive martial arts. A decorated soldier with 3 tours in Afghanistan versus an undefeated tournament fighter. With shocking results. How did a champion martial artist end up neutralized in seconds? Stay with me to discover what happens when showmanship confronts real-world combat training. If you enjoyed this intense showdown, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more mind-blowing content. Chen stepped out of his black taxi, designer sunglasses reflecting the London sun, as tourists parted before him like a human sea. His team jackets, matching crimson with gold trim, identified his entourage immediately. 3 international titles hung invisible yet palpable in the air around him, part of an aura he'd spent years perfecting. At 32, Chen had transformed from competitor to brand, his chain of elite dojos across California serving as monuments to his perceived invincibility. The contrast was immediate and jarring. Buckingham Palace loomed before him, its weathered stone facade embodying centuries of restraint and dignified service to the crown. Chen, flanked by his practiced semicircle of followers, represented the antithesis: flash, brashness, and assumed superiority. Tourists in sensible shoes moved with quiet reverence around the palace grounds, speaking in hushed tones as though in church. While Chen spoke at full volume, his California accent slicing through their respectful murmurs. "This is going to be epic," he announced to the phone held aloft in his hand. The live stream had already attracted hundreds of viewers drawn by his theatrical performances. His followers knew the pattern: find something traditional, challenge it, prove its inferiority to his modern combat techniques. Each view translated to potential students at his dojos: undefeated, untouchable, unstoppable. The mantra adorned merchandise sold through his website and was repeated by devoted students before tournaments. This carefully cultivated image required years of selective storytelling, highlighting victories, obscuring near losses, crafting a narrative of martial superiority. What Chen couldn't see was the dangerous gap between his understanding of combat and reality. In the controlled environment of competition with rules and referees, Chen excelled. Points were awarded for form and theatrical execution. But as Colonel James Thornton, watching from several yards away, would later observe, nothing in Chen's training had prepared him for what was about to happen. "Now I'm going to show you guys the difference between British tradition and actual combat effectiveness," Chen announced to his viewers. His body language shifted as he approached the gates, scanning the guards with what he believed was expert analysis. In reality, he displayed the practiced movements of a man who had never faced true combat, only its sanitized approximation. Chen circled, deliberately entering the peripheral vision of the guards while his partners positioned themselves to capture the confrontation. "Watch this guy," Chen said, pointing directly at William Harrington, who stood perfectly still, the embodiment of the discipline Chen had just dismissed as ceremonial garbage. "See how he's completely open on his left side? That's what happens when you train for show instead of effectiveness," Chen continued, moving closer with each step. What he interpreted as weakness was the opposite: stillness born of battlefield necessity, where unnecessary movement meant death. Chen selected his target with deliberate calculation, misreading every signal. Harrington's immobility registered as inability rather than choice. His disciplined restraint translated as lack of awareness. Each misinterpretation drew Chen further into a trap of his own making as he positioned himself for a practical demonstration, unaware he was about to receive the education of his lifetime. The uniform that Chen mistook for mere ceremony concealed a deadly truth. Behind that stoic red tunic stood not a tourist attraction, but a man who had crawled through Afghanistan's poppy fields with a combat knife between his teeth and neutralized high-value targets in pitch-black Syrian compounds. William Harrington's stillness wasn't weakness, it was the calm before devastating action. While tourists circled with their selfie sticks, Harrington's mind processed his surroundings with military precision. The bearskin cap and scarlet jacket clothed a soldier whose combat awareness had been forged in environments where the slightest lapse in attention meant death. During one mission in Kandahar, he had remained motionless for 6 hours in a shallow irrigation ditch before eliminating a high-value target with a single, silent strike. This same discipline now allowed him to stand perfectly still while his battlefield-honed peripheral vision captured everything, including Chen's increasingly aggressive posture. Chen's showmanship and Harrington's lethal capability represented two fundamentally different worlds about to collide. One built for display, the other for survival. Most visitors to Buckingham Palace never realize that the selection process for the Queen's Guard eliminates 90% of applicants. Those who make it through endure psychological assessments designed to identify individuals who can maintain absolute composure while processing complex threat patterns. The ceremonial stillness is a practical demonstration of the same mental discipline that allows operators to make life-or-death decisions under extreme duress. The discipline you see in these guards is an extension of their combat training, military experts explain. That mental control allows these soldiers to remain unflappable, whether facing tourist harassment or enemy fire. 17 distinct details. That's how many separate observations about Chen had already registered in Harrington's tactical assessment. Threat angle, distance to target, potential weapons, secondary threats in the crowd, evacuation routes, response options, all processed without a single twitch of facial muscle. Harrington had been conditioned to neutralize threats in environments where rules were secondary to survival. The Royal Guard's training regimen teaches soldiers to channel ceremonial precision into combat effectiveness. The control required to stand motionless translates directly to the discipline needed when action becomes necessary. Colonel James Thornton, watching from nearby, immediately recognized what was unfolding. The retired Royal Marine had seen that particular combination of swagger and calculation in Chen's approach before in war zones, not tourist attractions. He's looking for confrontation, Thornton would later recall thinking, as he observed Chen's deliberate movement patterns. The Guard's ceremonial stillness is a manifestation of their battlefield readiness. While Chen calculated angles for maximum social media impact, Harrington had already categorized multiple potential response scenarios. Few who posed beside Harrington for vacation photos knew they stood next to a decorated combat veteran. His medal ceremony after a classified operation in Syria had been conducted without cameras, just a quiet acknowledgement of actions that would never appear in any public record. This fundamental difference between performance and warfare created the dangerous misconception that Chen now operated under. What appeared to him as an opportunity for demonstration was, in Harrington's tactical assessment, a potential security incident requiring measured response. That dangerous misconception became Chen's roadmap as he stepped into the forbidden zone surrounding Harrington. The invisible boundary that separated curious tourists from the Queen's Guard might as well have been a starting bell in Chen's mind. His calculated movements betrayed his intentions. This wasn't spontaneous disrespect, but a choreographed provocation designed for maximum effect. "Look at this statue they call a soldier," Chen announced, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the uncomfortable crowd. "In my world, a fighter who stands still is asking to get knocked down." Each word was deliberately chosen to belittle the Guard's training. The German family nearby exchanged concerned glances. "Das ist respektlos," the father muttered, quickly steering his children away from the escalating spectacle. Other tourists created a widening circle around the confrontation. Some pulled out phones while others watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright disapproval. None intervened. Colonel Thornton, observing from several yards away, immediately recognized the pattern. Chen's behavior wasn't unique. Provocations at ceremonial posts happened regularly. What made this situation concerning was the methodical escalation, the deliberate nature of each step Chen took. Chen circled Harrington like a wolf studying prey, analyzing his form with exaggerated contempt. "Military training?" he scoffed to his digital audience. "They've trained all the fighting instinct out of him." With each dismissive comment, Chen drew closer, deliberately entering Harrington's peripheral vision before executing quick jabs that stopped just short of the guard's face. The martial artist's approach was tactical. He understood the psychological impact of invasion of personal space. By positioning himself at different angles, Chen attempted to trigger defensive instincts that even the most disciplined soldier possessed. Each movement was calculated to force a reaction, to demonstrate his point about military combat training. "Static defense is obsolete," Chen declared, studying Harrington's impassive face. "I'm about to show you why." The statement was directed at his growing audience, both physical and digital. Chen transformed from martial arts champion to impromptu ringside announcer, building anticipation. An elderly woman clutched her husband's arm. "Someone should stop this," she whispered, her voice trembling. The crowd's reactions amplified the tension. What had begun as a typical tourist photo opportunity had morphed into something volatile. Some appeared entertained while others sensed the dangerous undercurrents. "I'm going to show you why static defense is fundamentally obsolete," Chen announced, positioning himself directly in front of Harrington. In Chen's mind, he was staging a confrontation between different combat philosophies, with himself as the victor. The transformation was complete. Chen had evolved from tourist to provocateur, from observer to performer. His body language shifted as he prepared to deliver on his promise of a practical demonstration. The gathered crowd held its collective breath, waiting. How did Chen provoke the royal guard? Through a calculated series of boundary violations, first verbal, then physical, then psychological. His dismissive assessment, mockery of discipline, and physical encroachment formed an escalating ladder of provocation. Each rung Chen climbed was designed to elicit a response, to prove his point about the superiority of his combat philosophy. The line between competition and combat exists for a reason. And as Chen's perfectly executed spinning heel kick connected with Harrington's temple, producing a crack that silenced the crowd, that line was obliterated in a moment that would forever change both men's understanding of their training. The crowd witnessed martial artistry in technical form. Chen's body pivoted with fluid precision that had earned him championship titles. His foot traced an arc through the air as he executed a 360-degree spin, generating maximum force. Years of tournament training had refined this movement into something balanced, a harmony of timing and explosive power designed to impress judges within the controlled environment of competition. The heel struck with championship precision. A sharp crack echoed through the morning air as leather connected with flesh and bone. Harrington's bearskin cap launched skyward, spinning before landing several feet away. Smartphones captured the moment, their owners collectively gasping at the violent spectacle unfolding before them. In that single point of impact, two entirely different combat philosophies collided. Chen's eyes widened with anticipation as calculations raced through his mind. Angle of impact, force generated, points awarded in a tournament setting. His expression betrayed his certainty. This was his moment of triumph, the culmination of his provocations, the proof he sought about the superiority of his fighting style. Meanwhile, Harrington's body absorbed the strike with a subtle shift in weight that only the most experienced observers might notice. Even as the impact registered, his training activated. Threat assessment, tactical positioning, response options. The guard's mental processes centered not on appearance, but on immediate neutralization of danger. Two men experienced the same physical moment through completely different mental frameworks, one performing for points, the other preparing for survival. As the kick completed its arc, Chen's face revealed triumph. His eyes sparkled with victory, his lips curled into the beginning of a satisfied smile. In his mind, the outcome was predetermined. The ceremonial guard would crumple, proving his point about military training versus championship martial arts. He had executed flawlessly. In his experience, when his heel connected with that precision, opponents fell. The crowd held their breath. Time stretched as they waited for Harrington to fall, for the expected conclusion to this drama. The anticipation built into an almost unbearable tension as the predicted outcome failed to materialize. Instead, Harrington remained standing. A thin line of blood traced down from his temple, but his posture hadn't changed. The only difference, sending chills through those closest, was in his eyes. Where before they maintained the 1,000-yard stare of ceremonial duty, now they locked directly onto Chen's with focused clarity. No pain registered, no fear, only tactical assessment. It was the shift from ceremonial figure to operational mode. What happened when Chen kicked the guard? Everything went according to plan technically. A tournament-perfect kick landed precisely. But in the gap between martial sports and actual combat, intention met reality. The kick that would have scored maximum points in competition, that would have ended a match to applause, failed to achieve its purpose outside the controlled environment of a tournament. It demonstrated skill, but revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of the differences between fighting for points and training for survival. In that frozen moment after the kick landed, as blood trickled down Harrington's temple and the crowd held its collective breath, two worlds of combat training stood in stark opposition. The tournament champion and the battlefield veteran, each products of entirely different training philosophies, were about to demonstrate which approach truly mattered when survival was at stake. The transformation in Harrington was immediate. His eyes shifted from ceremonial blankness to tactical precision, the change unmistakable to anyone who understood combat. Where tourists had seen a decorative figure moments before, now stood a predator with the calculated economy of movement that comes only from stalking targets through mountain passes and urban conflict zones. Harrington caught Chen's leg before it could fully retract and executed a textbook-perfect takedown with brutal efficiency. The guard's movements displayed none of the theatrical flair that characterized Chen's attack. This was about neutralizing a threat with the precision that had been drilled into him thousands of times, where failure meant death, not lost points. Chen's expression transformed from smug satisfaction to alarm as he found himself suddenly airborne. His body, accustomed to choreographed tournament exchanges, had no reference point for the ruthless pragmatism of Harrington's response. The champion's championship reflexes fired desperately, but Harrington was already 3 moves ahead, operating on combat mathematics Chen had never learned. Securing Chen in a joint lock that rendered the martial artist's striking arsenal useless, Harrington demonstrated the fundamental disconnect between their training backgrounds. Chen's body went rigid with shock. His tournament techniques, designed for environments with referees and rules, offered no solutions against Harrington's battlefield-tested control methods. The guard applied precisely enough pressure to immobilize without causing permanent damage, another skill honed in real-world combat situations. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Chen, dominant moments before, struggled ineffectively against Harrington's iron control. Each escape attempt was met with minute adjustments, anticipating and neutralizing before the champion could complete his movements. This wasn't a sporting exchange. It was the one-sided reality of combat expertise applied against someone who had never experienced it. Palace security arrived with coordinated efficiency, immediately establishing a perimeter while communicating through discrete signals. The lead officer approached with stern professionalism, moving to take custody of Chen with the hardened expression of someone who had encountered similar situations before. Throughout the response, what stood out most was Harrington's calm, mechanical precision. There was no anger or retaliation, just the clinical application of force necessary to neutralize a threat. His breathing remained steady, his movements economical. The blood on his temple seemed almost irrelevant to him as his focus remained tactical until the threat was completely contained. What we witnessed was the difference between performance and function, Colonel Thornton later observed while reviewing the footage. Chen's technique was flawless by competition standards, powerful balanced, and precise. But Harrington's response revealed the vast gulf between martial arts designed to impress judges and combat training designed to ensure survival. One prioritized aesthetic perfection, the other focused exclusively on effectiveness. The security officer's stern face hardened further as he informed Chen of the charges. Assaulting a serviceman on duty is not a matter the Crown takes lightly. The martial arts champion's expression shifted from defiance to disbelief as the reality of his situation crystallized. This wasn't a tournament with points and judges. This was the real world, with real consequences that were now cascading through his life with unstoppable momentum. The charges fell like hammer blows: assault on a serving member of His Majesty's forces, disruption of ceremonial duties, and potential additional charges pending Crown prosecution review. Each accusation dismantled another stone in the fortress of Chen's ego. The ceremonial guardsman he had dismissed as a tourist attraction stood protected by centuries of tradition and law. As palace security processed Chen, Harrington had already received a replacement bearskin cap and resumed his post with disciplined stillness. The contrast was stark, Chen's world crumbling like a castle built on sand, while Harrington returned to duty as though the incident were merely a passing breeze against Gibraltar. Back at his post, Harrington's stillness spoke volumes. The discipline allowing him to stand motionless for hours, the very quality Chen had mistaken for vulnerability, had enabled him to neutralize a threat with surgical precision. The blood had been wiped from his temple, leaving only digital evidence of the encounter already racing across the internet. That digital record became Chen's undoing. His own live stream documented his hubris and downfall in excruciating detail. The video spread not as a demonstration of prowess, but as a cautionary fable, a modern Icarus whose wings of arrogance melted when flying too close to the sun of military discipline. Professional consequences arrived with tsunami force. Sponsors fled, dojos emptied, and fellow martial artists publicly denounced his actions as betrayals of core disciplinary principles. His carefully cultivated image of invincibility shattered, revealing the hollow showmanship beneath. Colonel James Thornton provided crucial context to journalists about Royal Guards. The ability to stand motionless for hours is not separate from their combat training, he explained. It is an extension of it. That mental control is the same discipline that allows a soldier to remain calm under enemy fire, to make split-second decisions when lives are at stake. This fundamental misunderstanding, mistaking discipline for weakness, ceremonial duty for combat ineffectiveness, had cost Chen everything. Military training experts highlighted the difference between tournament martial arts, optimized for scoring points in controlled environments, and military combat training focused on neutralizing threats in unpredictable, high-stakes situations. For Chen, legal penalties awaited court determination, but public judgment had already fallen. The more profound punishment came from his own realization of how severely he had misjudged the situation. His competition-honed skills proved inadequate in a real encounter. His understanding of combat, shaped by environments with referees and rules, left him unprepared for battlefield-tested efficiency. In the aftermath, Chen began a transformation no training regimen could have prepared him for, a humbling reassessment of everything he thought he knew. He started to understand that true martial skill wasn't about dominating opponents for applause, but embodying the mental control Harrington had displayed both before and after their fateful encounter. In the quietest moments of the confrontation, something profound revealed itself. Harrington's response wasn't just technical mastery, it was philosophical. He neutralized the threat with minimal movement and without vindictive force, his power manifesting not in domination, but in precise control. Like a deep reservoir that remains undisturbed at its depths, despite surface turbulence, Harrington's approach embodied equilibrium while Chen sought superiority. Two opposing philosophies of strength revealing themselves. For those watching closely, the lesson transcends martial arts. True power is forged through self-mastery rather than domination, a strength that needs no audience, no validation, and no announcement. The most formidable force often speaks the softest,